to 10. Count on my nose 100 times. I'd rather not.
Hi folks, I just want to make sure that you know exactly what to do for your work that you're supposed to do on your own from today until I meet you again on Thursday. So Tuesday to Thursday. This is in the Schoology folder. So I want to focus in on this link first of all and just say, okay, you're going to click on this link and it says, please join our Khan Academy class. That's if you haven't done that yet. We had a Khan Academy assignment and I've asked you guys to do this, but I want to make sure that you're just clear and the instructions are really easy. So you'll click on that link and it'll bring you to a Chrome tab to let you do that. Then it's going to have a screen that looks a little bit like this. And here's where you have to decide, hey, have I been in Khan Academy before or not? I would suggest starting with login using your existing account if you're not sure, because you're going to log in using your Google account. So you're going to click that and then continue with Google. And then you're going to, it says here blocked third party. So you may have to ensure that this doesn't block you. I'm in incognito mode, so you won't run into that, but you'll just go ahead and once you click on that continue with Google, you just log in using your school Google account. So that's your lunch number at dpsk12.net, and it should bring you right in. Your password is your 8-digit birthday, just the same way that we've been logging into Schoology and all these other things. So that's going to be your first step. I'll have some assignments after that, but I wanted to just cover how do I join the class so that Mr. Morin can see the results when I do the practice examples and practice problems that he's assigned me. So one of the sets of practice problems that I'm going to have you do tonight is to be able to write an equation from a graph. Now, we spent a bunch of time in the past week thinking about how do we get our rate of change, our slope, from a graph. And so we're just going to sort of extend that to putting in the additional requirement, just like we did in today's 3-act math task, of adding in a starting point that's a little bit higher, just like we added in that starting point that was on top of the table when we were doing the paper stacking. So here again, the first thing that I want to think about is I have a story being told, and really, I think it sort of makes sense to start at the start. And so I'm just going to sort of put that point there. And the reason that this is sort of the easiest place to start is A, because that's the way we tell a story. We start at the start and then we think about what's changing. B, it's always going to be located in the middle of our graph or wherever the y-axis is. We just find that y-axis, we kind of travel down with our eyes and we see, oh, where is that blue line crossing? Where's the line that we're trying to graph crossing that y-axis? That's called our y-intercept point. And I just sort of label that. That is our y-intercept point. And so that is at 0, 4. And so that 4 number is going to be our b in our equation here. Remember, we've talked through our work over the weekend and into today about this idea that we have a slope-intercept form of an equation, y equals mx plus b, where the m stands for our slope number and the b is this y-intercept or starting point. So now the only thing that we have to do now is to think about how much is this line going up. Well, I'm noticing that if I sort of find some points where it's easy to read on my y ruler and easy to read on my x ruler, like this one I can see is right above my 1 and it's right across from my 6, those are going to fall on the corners of my graph paper grids. And so I find those sort of nice points, first of all, because it's easy for me to then measure, oh, how much did this go up by? I can sort of form the beginnings of a triangle here. And I can see that this is, well, the top of it is at 8, and the bottom of it is down here at 6, and so that difference is that it has gone up by 2. But then, remember, knowing how much we increased doesn't tell us how fast. It only tells us the increase. That's the rise number here in our slope. So we also need to say, well, how long did it take? That's our run number. How far over did we go? So our run number is, well, it's on the right edge is at 2, and at the beginning here, this is above the 1. So the 2 minus 1, that's just a run of 1. So this is our run here. So now our slope number is going to be 2, our rise, over 1, our run. And 2 over 1 is a simple fraction we can simplify, and that's just 2. So that is our rate of change. So now we put these two things together in our slope-intercept form. Slope goes here, and y-intercept goes here. And if we were to submit this in Khan Academy, it would say... Second assignment that I have for you tonight from Khan Academy is a little bit trickier, and it's actually leading us into what I'm going to teach you when I see you on Thursday, but I want you to give it a try. And that is, what do we do when we're given just 2 points and we're asked to write an equation? And so the first thing that I want to point out is that remember the tools that we have, right? The tools that we have say, well, I know that we can make a graph. I know that we can make a table. I know that we want to be able to write an equation. I know that all of these things should help us to sort of tell the story of how something is starting and then how something is changing. And so starting there and saying, well, I know that what we're going to try to get to is y equals mx plus b, because our story has a start, that's this b, that's my y-intercept number, and it has a rate of change that tells us how our pattern is changing, either increasing or decreasing. So one of the things that I would do here is I would say, well, look, I don't like when you list out points here. I know that this is x and y, and this is x and y, and I know how to organize things like that. I'm going to make a table, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to say x's and y's, and I know that these 2 points must be somewhere in this table. Now I'm going to do something a little bit tricky, and I'm going to put these down here. I'm going to say 3, -1, and I'm going to say that's a point on my table, and then 4, 7. But I'm not going to put them at the beginning of my table because I want to remember, like we've been talking about this week, that our starting point, just like in the paper stacking situation, our starting point wasn't 5 packs of paper was 25 centimeters. Our starting point was what happens when we don't have any paper. What happens at x equals 0? At x equals 0, that is our y-intercept. That is our starting point. So now when I look at this table, I go, oh, well, there's kind of some missing pieces here. Why don't I just fill those in, and we'll try to figure out what this table looks like one step at a time. Okay? So this is sort of just my organizing piece. I put these 2 pieces of information that I know into my table, and I'm going to try to figure out, well, what can I figure out here? I can't just see what my starting point is, so maybe I don't start with that. But I can, if I have 2 points here, I can say, well, what is my rise? So this is 7 minus -1. So I'm starting below ground by -1. I'm going all the way up to 7. So this would be like saying 7 plus +1. This would be a rise of 8. And if you think about that, 1 below going all the way up to 7. Okay, that's rising by 8. And then our run here, actually I want to use purple. My run here is +1, going from 3 to 4. So my slope here, I can figure out. My slope is 8 for my rise, 1 for my run, that rhymes, So I know my slope number, I know this part of my equation is going to be 8. In fact, I can even start writing my equation here. I can go down here and say, well, I don't know what my b is yet, but I know it's going to be y equals 8x plus something. We're not sure yet. Okay. So the next thing that I'm going to think about is, well, I know that no matter how big my steps are, I know no matter how big my steps are, that my rise over my run is going to be 8. It's going to be 8 over 1. But here, what I really want to do is I want to go all the way back to 0. So that's increasing by 3 here. Okay, instead of a jump of just 1, I'm saying, well, how big is this step? How big is that rise if my run is 3? So then I start looking at this and I go, oh man, well, that's a proportion. I know I've done this when I was in middle school. I said, oh, okay, well, if I want to know what this is, right? Well, I know my scale factor. This is 3 times the size. So I'm scaling this up. I'm multiplying this times 3, and that tells me that step must have been going up by 24. So this not a question mark anymore. I can say, oh, well, this was plus 24, and I want to know, well, what was my b? What did I start with? Okay, so I don't know. Let's figure it out. Let's draw it out. So something, the starting point that I want to know, this b, plus 24. Here, let's use purple here because that's what I used over here. So plus 24 is how I got down here to -1. Well, this is sort of an algebra problem. If I added something to this, I added 24 to this starting point, and it got me up to -1. Well, it must have been way down in the negatives. Okay, so I'm going to subtract off. I'm going to go further down, 24 more down into the negative. That means that this b must have been negative 25. This must have been negative 25. Let's check and see if it works. Negative 25 plus 24. Oh, that does get, so this starting point, and again, I'm going to make some space here so I can write it in here. This starting point, my b, now, I've backtracked that to figure out this must have been down at negative 25. So that is my starting point. Now I know my starting point, negative 25, and I know my rate of change, which is 8. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in, and now I know my full equation is 8x plus negative 25. Now we might not write plus negative, that's just a little awkward. So we would probably write this as y equals 8x minus 25. So, as I said, a little bit challenging. Make a table. Use your rate to try to count back to your starting point. Let's see if you can do these challenge problems from Khan Academy.
Count up to 5, I can count to 10. Count on my nose 100 times.